2020 was a pretty overall terrible year for a lot of people. You could argue that this is probably the worst thing that we'll ever deal with within our generation. During 2020, the pandemic ended up affecting the entire world and is still affecting it right now. We've all become used to what is going on and used to the negativity that has been going on in the world. And we're all saying enough is enough and going to do our part at making the world a better place and forcing 2021 to be a better year. For a lot of people, including myself, we like to look for a way to escape what we're dealing with in reality. And for me, that has always been video games. Video games has always been the positive beacon in my life. I'm very fortunate, thanks to all of you watching, to be able to say that doing YouTube, this is my life, this is my dream job, and I'm making a full-time living from this, and I feel extremely blessed for that. So this is going to be my top 10 games of 2020. There's a lot of different games that I wanted to talk about today, but I have slowly worked really hard to refine this list to the games that I felt were the most impactful for me over last year. Spasmophobia. I shared so many laughs with my friends. It is a multiplayer horror game that manages to be absolutely horrifying, but no matter how many times me and my friends would end up getting scared, we would always force ourselves to face our fears, go into the haunted house, screw each other over, and in the end, it was just nothing but love, nothing but happiness, nothing but laughs. Cyberpunk 2077 may have only just released recently. This is one of those rare games where you start playing it and then you realize that the hours just fly by, which can end up being really, really good, as I mentioned, for an escape from what you are currently dealing with. And although the game does definitely have a lot of problems with all of the bugs and lack of promised content, the fact of the matter is that this is still an extraordinary game. Minecraft Dungeons for me was another just amazing adventure because I have always and will continue to be a huge fan of the Diablo games. And I'm extremely excited for Diablo 4, and Minecraft Dungeons ended up scratching that itch of a dungeon crawling looter game that was very, very casual and also really cute because it was in the Minecraft universe. I'm still excited for all of the new DLC content that's going to be coming out from Minecraft Dungeons over the next few months. Final Fantasy VII Remake, man. This game spoke to me in such a deep, meaningful way because it brought me back to a lot of good memories that I had growing up with my brother playing games like this. He was always really into these JRPGs, and I always really enjoyed watching those games and sharing the experience with him while playing those games, giving the characters funny voices and stuff. This is one of those rare games and rare experiences where I kind of get really sad because being a grown-up now, I look back at the past and when my entire life was just video games, and it was always just, oh, well, in an hour after my brother's done, I'll get to start playing, or maybe I'll get to see him play the game next or whatever. The point is that there was no responsibility during those times, and it was just a lot simpler, didn't have to deal with paying the bills or anything like that, and that is why these games still have such a deep meaning for me, and why they'll continue to have meaning for me going into being an old-ass man. And the Final Fantasy VII Remake successfully captured the same feelings that I had back when we played the original, even if some of it was a bit superfluous. HalfLife Alyx is what put VR games on the map. I would say that this is probably the best virtual reality game I've ever played. There might be arguments from VR enthusiasts about HalfLife Alyx being a bit too casual friendly, but that's exactly why I would say that this game is a success in its own merit. Not to mention Valve actually putting out a game. Valve used to put out games and then they stopped, which is disappointing because this company still has what it takes to end up putting out a game that is going to be completely groundbreaking, and HalfLife Alyx was that. It was just as good as any other Half-Life game I've played, but also had the added benefit of being in virtual reality and managed to do the virtual reality games justice by being a whole other world that you got to experience. The Last of Us Part 2, though met with a lot of controversy, ended up being probably one of my favorite stories of 2020 in a video game, and that's pretty hard to say because of the fact that I generally don't care about stories in video games. I would argue for you to try and find a story that didn't end up being as memorable as Last of Us 2 was, because that's the thing, is whether you enjoyed the story or not, I'm certain that it left an impression on everyone who ended up playing it. And that, to me, is what they set out to do, and they accomplished that. Not to mention the fact that The Last of Us Part 2 has made #1 on so many different top 10 lists of 2020, and it's no surprise, really. The Demon's Souls remake, oh my god, I had a blast playing through this one, dude, and I'm really looking forward to when some of my friends end up picking up a PS5 later in the years and I can end up revisiting this game with them, because good god, dude, I have never seen a game that has been more beautiful. Like, seriously, I don't know how they ended up making this game look this good, but I guess this is the guys that ended up remaking Shadow of the Colossus, and that game looked great as well for the remake. Overall, Dark Souls is a game that has impacted many people, myself included. I didn't like the games originally, but then when I ended up playing them for the multiplayer, that's where it really started to hit home with me, just how much I ended up enjoying these games. The only reason Demon's Souls isn't higher on my list is because I feel like the remake tried to stay a little too close to the original in some regards. So there was a lot of aspects of the game that I felt were very dated and janky that they could have just outright gotten rid of, and I don't think they would have upset any of the old school fans. Doom Eternal, oh my god, dude, this is, I can only define this game as adrenaline, because that's what it is. I have never had a more exciting, heart-racing experience in a first-person shooter as what I did with Doom Eternal. I played through the entire game in one sitting, and the downloadable content, though really cool and a lot of fun, was not as good as the main overall experience that I had with the full single player. I only hope that in the future they end up adding the invasion mode that they promised us and end up adding some form of co-op, because the original reason why I enjoyed Doom 1 and Doom 2, the old school games, was because I got to play it multiplayer with my friends, and that is something that I feel is missing from a lot of modern games. And even with Doom especially, I feel like they could have really hit it home if they included some sort of multiplayer co-op aspect. Genshin Impact, this might come as a surprise, is not #1 on my list. It's actually the second on my list, just because even though this is a game that I've already sank countless hours into and know that I'm going to play for years, and I would argue Genshin Impact is one of my absolute favorite games that I've ever played, just because Zelda Breath of the Wild is one of my favorite games, and Genshin Impact is a blatant ripoff of that, which is a huge compliment to it. I don't mean to say that in a negative light, because having a game rip off something as ambitious as Zelda Breath of the Wild is no easy task, and they managed to do it in spades. The game has exploration down to a T, but it also has a lot of grinding, and I love grinding. That's why I've been playing Trove on the channel for so many years, because I enjoy grindy video games. But the reason it's not #1 on my list, and I know that a lot of you that ended up experiencing the game for yourselves will probably be able to agree, is because Ghost of Tsushima is my game of the year for 2020. This game, it just meant so much to me. The experience that I had playing it, the story, though kind of forgettable in the middle part, the beginning and the end was strong. And overall, I would say that this is the highest quality open world game that I've ever played. even if there might technically not be that much to do in the game as far as the exploration, because basically the game boils down to wandering around, going to specific locations, and usually ends up involving fighting. But the thing is that the locations were just so beautiful, and the combat is some of the best I've ever had in a video game. I just wanted more. No matter how many times I ended up getting a quest where somebody was robbed and they needed me to go kill someone. Somebody needed me to climb to a tower to observe an area so that I could go kill someone. I reveled in the opportunity of anything that had to do with the combat, because the combat not only was fun to play, it was beautiful. The entire game was beautiful. I'm honestly shocked that there hasn't been another open world game that is based solely on Japan and samurais and ninjas and all that stuff, especially with how well Ghost of Tsushima ended up dealing with it. And I really am excited for future content for the game. They ended up just randomly adding a multiplayer mode, and I played the heck out of that. But the thing about Ghost of Tsushima is it's one of those games that's very easy to pick up and play, even if you haven't played it in a while. I find that a lot of games that I play, I'll play them to a certain point, and then you might end up stopping, and then it's really hard to get back into it. Ghost of Tsushima isn't like that. I periodically pick this game up, like maybe once a week, even if just to go into a camp or to explore the world a little bit. Anything that gives me an excuse to play this game a little bit more. And I just hope that they end up adding some downloadable content somewhere down the line, because I would love to have a reason to actually go back and play it again. This has been my list of top 10 games for 2020. Obviously, there's so many more games that we ended up playing over the year, but again, I really needed to break down which games ended up having a deep, meaningful impact with me personally going through this year. And going into 2021, even if we don't really have that many games to look forward to in 2021, I feel like all of the games that I was waiting for ended up coming out in 2020. So it's definitely set a really high bar, but I'm looking forward to the games that are coming out this year, and looking forward to hopefully having the channel grow and having any of you that are going to end up being new to the channel to be able to enjoy my content. And for those that are already with the channel, I'm hoping that I can end up delivering an experience that you find enjoyable and find to be a distraction from the harshness of what's going on, because I'm very fortunate in that where I am currently living, I'm not really dealing with the pandemic as much. I can still go outside. We're not in lockdown or anything. So I'm very, very lucky that I am not dealing with what I'm seeing so many others deal with. And a lot of my friends, especially that are in the US, are dealing with so much more just because of, people being stupid, this, that, and the other thing. But I just want to let you know that, my heart goes out to you. I love you. Thank you for watching. And I hope that you enjoy my content into the future. And I thank you wholeheartedly for giving me the opportunity to play video games for a living and do heartfelt videos like this, as well as just the goofy ones. So yeah, here's to 2021. Sayonara. And as always, stay epic, because you always have been epic in my eyes.